Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And today I'm going to talk about another classic title in the Criterion collection, coinciding with the Barnes & Noble 2023 half-price sale on Criterion titles. And the movie I'm going to talk about today is Anatomy of a Murder from 1959, directed by Otto Preminger and starring Jimmy Stewart, and I think one of his greatest roles. And this was based on a best-selling novel by Robert Travers, which was the pen name of John Volker, who was a defense attorney living in Marquette County, Michigan, which was the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I don't think I've ever seen another film that was made in the Upper Peninsula, and all the scenes in this film, Anatomy of a Murder, are filmed in this county, Marquette County, and some of them in the actual locations where the real life story occurred. So interiors and exteriors. So this is something that really lends authenticity to the film. And the murder, Lieutenant Mannion, an officer at a Army base at Thunder Bay, the resort area of Marquette County. He is sleeping at home. His wife is going to the local bar, nightclub. She comes home all disheveled. She claims that Barney Quill, the proprietor of this nightclub, has beaten and raped her. He waits an hour, grabs his gun, goes to the bar and plugs Barney Quill full of bullets, and then immediately turns himself in, as he believes that he has the unwritten law on his side. And so again, we don't see any of these events. We hear about them from several different points of view as the film progresses. So Lieutenant Mannion, played by Ben Gazzara, his wife Laura, played by Lee Remick, in a really nice performance. Both of them really give terrific performances here. So this murder trial comes into the lap of Paul Beegler, played by Jimmy Stewart. Now, Paul Beegler is the former district attorney in Marquette County. He's been beaten in a most recent election by a man who's not able to. He's a far less able man than Jimmy Stewart, who's licking his wounds by fishing and playing honky-tonk piano, smoking Italian cigars, and reading law at night with his best friend Parnell. They spend the whole night sometimes taking down the law books and reading law. Parnell, played by Arthur O'Connell, who I believe was nominated for Best Supporting Actor Oscar this year for this movie, but now is fallen on alcoholic ways. But we see Jimmy Stewart, Paul Beegler, as a loyal friend, homespun, sort of the Jimmy Stewart of the 1930s, a little bit of it, but he's indifferent to me. He's now a practicing attorney, but he seems indifferent to the financial concerns of his practice, much to the chagrin of his secretary, Maida, played by the wisecracking Eve Arden, in another delightful performance. So he's been recommended to defend Lieutenant Mannion. He goes to meet him. Lieutenant Mannion, he doesn't like him. Lieutenant Mannion's insolent, he's overconfident, and Paul Beegler doesn't really know whether he believes him or not. He believes the story of the prosecution comes up with an alternate story where Barney Quill and Laura Mannion did have sex, but then when she went home, Lieutenant Mannion beat the story out of her. So he was the one that actually beat his wife up. So we are the jury here, because when we go to court, and there's a lot of scenes in the courtroom here, and they are absolutely terrific. We hear all the evidence. We have to sift through all this evidence, and all these various stories that we hear. And Jimmy Stewart, very likable, homespun. When he gets into the courtroom, he becomes a performance artist, and this is definitely a performance artist. It's just breathtaking, Stewart's performance here. And Otto Preminger believed that In jury trials, the winner goes to whichever side gives the best performance. Now, the current DA that beat Jimmy Stewart, Paul Beigler, in the most recent election, he's not up to the task. Jimmy Stewart is overwhelmingly better. So they have to call reinforcements from the big city of Lansing, the capital of Michigan, downstate. And here comes Dancer, played by George C. Scott in his debut film. And boy, what a performance. The two of them dance around the courtroom. And fireworks ensue. And it's just a riveting time. It's very funny at times as well. The judge in the case, that was a casting coup, getting George C. Scott to play Dancer. And Preminger had another casting coup. Because the non-actor who plays the judge is Joseph Welch. Now, nowadays, Joseph Welch would be probably not very well known, but in 1959, he was a household word because in the McCarthy trials that were televised live, that riveted the nation, there was a point in the trial, McCarthy is now going after sort of low-level officers in the armed services and the State Department and such. He's going after the personal life of this officer that Joseph Welch was advising in his appearance before the committee. And there had been an agreement about not going into this officer's personal life. But McCarthy, during the hearing, disregarded it and asked him the question he had agreed not to ask. And Joseph Welch had this homespun grandfatherly image that this is a man we trust, and you can see the outrage that comes over Joseph Welch in this. This has been preserved on film. And, he has this famous statement about, Senator, do you have no sense of decency? And that was sort of the end of McCarthy. And Joseph Welch became, pretty much a hero for most Americans who were ready to get rid of this Red Scare and this, what seemed like a persecution now of people that low-level people that don't deserve this kind of investigation. So Welch plays the judge, and there's a great deal of comedy in these courtroom scenes. And here you see, this is Joseph Welch, George C. Scott, Jimmy Stewart, and here the three attorneys are discussing what to call Laura's undergarments, and they have to come up with panties. So this was another film that Preminger was pushing the button on the envelope on the production code, which he started when he became an independent producer a few years earlier with The Moon is Blue. There were 3 words in there, including virgin, which was never used in films before in the U.S. And so he didn't get a production code, but he released it anyways in L.A. and it did a great deal of business. So he released it as an independent, non-production code movie. And he would, in the subsequent movies, he would also, use topics, controversial topics that had never been discussed before. In this movie, according to Foster Hirsch in the supplements, Preminger actually changes the word when they're discussing rape in the courtroom. Penetration was in the script. The production code says, no, we can't use penetration. So he changed it to violation. According to Foster Hirsch, this was the only time who was a biographer of Preminger. So this is the only time that Preminger ever did that, changed a word. So we have, and again, it was filmed on location, and one of the best locations in the movie is Paul Beigler's home. And this was the actual home that John Volker, the novelist, lived in during this time of the trial. And they filmed in the interiors as well. And I mean, it's just a fantastic use of a real life location, because you get that lived in experience or impression that you're actually in a real home where these characters actually live, because it's also Paul Beigler's office. When I visited, You couldn't go inside the house, as I recall it, but Foster Hirsch, in 10 years ago, this interview was from, he says you can go in and much of the furniture is exactly the same as it was in the movie. So we have a Duke Ellington score, jazz score, which is great. He makes an appearance in the movie itself. Preminger had him on the set to absorb the filming and the story, and he was writing the score as they were filming it. And 21 days after they finished this film, it opened in Chicago. Now, Preminger was a long take type director. There is a lot of edits in the interrogation type scenes, but far more than normal in a Preminger film, but it was obviously meticulously planned beforehand. Saul Bass did the titles. He did a lot of titles for Hitchcock as well. And so we get the Foster Hirsch interview on the supplements. We also get an excerpt from a television program called Firing Line. This was hosted by William F. Buckley, who was the intellectual right-winger of his day, and he would have liberal guests on, and he would use his superior intellect to try and demolish these liberals. But he had Preminger on to discuss obscenity. And Preminger just gets the best of Buckley over and over and over again. Buckley coming to the topic of obscenity more or less from his Catholic religious beliefs, and Preminger coming at him in a precise definition of what the law is. And Buckley didn't really understand that. Now, why was Preminger so expert on the law? Well, he graduated from law school in Vienna. Preminger came from a very wealthy and well-to-do family. His father was the Attorney General for the Austro-Hungarian Empire at one time, and Preminger wanted to go into the theater. He loved the theater, but his father said, "You got to do something practical." So he did get his law degree. Never practiced law, but you can see his use of his legal background training in almost all his films, but of course especially in Anatomy of a Murder, where he presents everything that happens in this movie, he presents as if we are the jury, and we have to sift through the evidence. And many of his other films are like that, where characters are hard to read. We have to make our minds up about a character. Is he telling the truth? Is he not telling the truth? So we get this terrific little booklet. There's a Nick Pinkerton essay in here, and then there's a piece on Joseph Walsh himself, both very fascinating. So another big, high recommendation from me if you're participating in this sale and you don't have this movie, Anatomy of a Murder. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.